We're here at Food on Demand in Las Vegas. We're going to be discussing Sweetgreen, DoorDash results, and Reef laying off 5% of their workforce. That's all ahead on this week's Monday Minute. Monday Minute works like this. We're going to ask each other 5 questions about the big headlines going on in the worlds of restaurant, off-premise, and technology. Are you ready? Let's go. Hi everyone, we're outside of the Mirage Conference Center. We've just finished up here at the Food on Demand conference. It's been pretty fun, hasn't it?
It's been great. This is one of my favorite conferences, if not my favorite, actually. Would highly recommend anyone who hasn't been to come next year. The content that the guys, Jared, Tom, and Nick put together is just fantastic. So it's been an action-packed 3 days of really interesting stuff going on, don't you think?
I think so. I mean, I completely agree. If you want to get the tactical insights, if you want to make sure you get some of the views that sometimes you perhaps might not get in some of the larger conferences, some of the tactics that I think can really help restaurants of all shapes and sizes, Food on Demand is definitely a good one to come to. And of course, we're a little bit biased because we get to present as well. And so we thought we'd start this week's Monday Minute by talking about a few of our sessions. I was second or third on stage after Noah Glass and Logan from Chipotle, and it was great to be able to spend some time with Ariane Turley and Andrew Costage of Yipit Data and Sense 360 respectively. And I wanted to bring this up for you all. For those of you that are watching us on YouTube, have a look at this slide here. This is one of Yipit Data slides that give a breakdown of the proportionality of customers who order via certain channels. And it's done by some particular brands. And you'll see on the right-hand side there, Panera bread. And one of the aspects that really just blew me away here is that 70% of Panera's orders are coming through their direct channel. And then about 10% or so are actually coming through either their direct channel and the third party, and then obviously the residual being through a third party. So what's remarkable about this for me is that customers, first of all, typically choose a lane, right?
Yeah, they self-select into the thing that they like the best, either from a process standpoint or perhaps for those who are, say, on Dash Pass, they're going to order through DoorDash, even if they really like Panera and go there all the time.
There's a trifecta, right? They have these ordering platforms that allow them to have this trifecta of digital ordering, payment, and loyalty. And all of these interfaces, whether it be Panera, Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, they allow you to be able to order wherever you are. So it can also be used for dining occasions. And I think that's the way of the future. Of course, they have the scale. Of course, they have the resources to be able to do this. But also do that thing which I've also often talked about here on the Monday Minute, and that is count the steps it takes to go through the process of ordering an item through to payment. And you'll find that they're within a 1 or 2 click equivalent of what DoorDash can offer. And that was one of the things that I mentioned to the crowd. But you also had a session. Tell us what your one was about.
Well, what I find fascinating about the session we were doing relative to the slide that you're talking about is that even those very, very advanced restaurants who have a huge majority of their sales coming through first-party channels, even they still have some third-party customers. And I think that tells you the third party is important, and you have to be on those channels, even if you have a really good first-party system. You have to be on those channels because some customers, that's just how they shop. You have to be on those channels because it is the digital equivalent of the food court at the mall. Hungry people there ready to order. And they are a part of the omni-channel business. So my particular panel had Laura Hunt from Nextbite, Andre from Doghouse, Jose from Otter, and Drew from Uber, and we talked about exactly that. Okay, so you're in the digital food court. How do you get yourself noticed? How do you get yourself seen? Fascinating panel about everyone talking about this is really the early days of the vertically specific search engines, which are very focused on, obviously, food, starting to branch out into other things, but mostly prepared food and restaurant. And typically, this was probably the most shocking thing that was revealed during this panel. Drew said that the typical customer session, they see over 100 restaurants. Wow, that's mind-blowing, right? And so how do you stand out amidst 100 restaurants? We talked about sponsored ads, promos, placements, all those types of things in order to get yourself seen. And the rapid fire answer to the question, what percentage of your digital third-party sales do you need to reinvest into marketing on that third party? 10%. Wow. I was blown away by how high that number was.
In fact, Nextbite suggested maybe a little bit more. And Andre said that even at the start of a rollout, when you're actually exploring a new market, you need to do even more than that. And it was those kind of tactics that I think really helped the audience. You rarely hear about those kind of things. For me, when Drew mentioned it's not just about trying to do it for a few weeks, there is a consistency that's also important, because there is this machine learning component behind all of this to help the algorithms learn what is best to be able to make your marketing work best.
And that was probably the other really fascinating thing. It's a whole panel about marketing, and what did most people talk about? Ops. And they said these algorithms to a great extent are driven by your operational performance, how long it takes you to get food out the door, what your ratings are, your open rate essentially on the platform. If you keep closing down and opening back up and closing down, that's not good for the algorithm. And so your operational performance will dictate how you're showing up on those platforms. So, spend 10% or just have great ops. I don't know. That's your choice.
Well, look, let's move on, because while we were here, DoorDash released their Q1 results, and I thought there were some pretty interesting things there. I mean, in link to my session at Food on Demand, we actually talked about how customers are ordering 5 times more frequently than on any other third-party platform on DoorDash right now. And when you tie that together with some of the results that we've seen from the Q1 results that came out last week, you'll see that they're 1.5 billion up on last year against the same quarter. And again, think about where we were this time last year. With the pandemic, of course, we're still in that kind of environment. They've got 25 million active users a month now and 10 million Dash Pass users. So it tells you that they've got this captive base of people that really like to use their platform. And you can understand why. The Dash Pass thing we mentioned recently with regards to how they're actually halving the price for students. And yet still, they had a 167 million net loss, which was worse than I think the analysts expected. I think they're moving in the right direction, wouldn't you say?
I think moving in the right direction, and certainly that kind of traction with customers. Eventually, I think they'll figure out how to turn that into a profitable business, because consumers definitely want this. Now, how long will that take, and how will they get there? It remains to be seen, but I think with that kind of consumer traction, they'll be able to make it happen.
So one of the other things that came out this week was a press release from our friends over at Nextbite. And this one you could say, well, how interesting and how fun is this? Well, it's not that fun, but actually goes to the heart of one of the biggest challenges for most restaurants when working with third parties, and that is the financial consolidation associated to orders and rebates and chargebacks and things like this. Tell us about it.
Nextbite is probably best known for their really fun brands that they've been putting out, virtual restaurant brands, doing in partnership with people like George Lopez and Wiz Khalifa. And you think, gosh, accounting, that doesn't seem as fun as chicken wings and mac and cheese and all those things, but it's a critical part of making this work. And one of the special things about Nextbite is that they combine those amazing fun brands with the technology to bring them to life in the restaurant environment. And the tech stack for most restaurants really struggles to figure out when DoorDash or Uber Eats gives a chargeback for some reason. Is that justified? What does it belong to? What should I tie it to? What revenue is it offsetting? And this now will enable them to match at the TLD level, the transaction level. They'll be able to see, this chargeback goes to this transaction. And now that will enable folks operationally to go figure out, okay, what went wrong? How do we fix it? How do we address that challenge? Or maybe, is it even justified? Might not be right. And currently, I think restaurants have a couple of options before this was released. Number one, they could hire a fleet of accountants to try to figure this out manually. Or number two, they could just suck it up and say, well, I guess, DoorDash gave us a chargeback, we'll just eat it. So this is
Many do.
Yeah, probably many do. Yeah, This is a huge advance for restaurants to be able to say what's really going on, and is that accurate? And if it is accurate, how do I address it?
And note to self, third parties, maybe this is an area which you should explore on your product set as well, because for a player like Nextbite to do it, it tells you that there's clearly a opportunity for you to improve your relationship with your merchants. Okay, let's move on. Another news story that we saw this week was Reef, one of the major players in the ghost kitchen world, are laying off 5% of their workforce. Is this what do you think this is? Just a case of scaling too fast? They've clearly got some big agenda topics with Wendy's, with their rollout of Wendy's brand across 800 locations. Have they bitten off too much than they can chew, perhaps? Or is this just typical at this stage of a company?
Yeah, I think the blessing and the curse of raising a lot of money is that you start to feel like you can, in fact, make all of your dreams come true. And anyone who's built a business knows it's much better to focus, get something right, and then earn the right to go into the next thing. And Reef had really expanded into a lot of different things at once. So certainly they started in the parking vertical, moved into the restaurant vertical with the ghost kitchens, but they were starting to take on things like pharmacy and express medical centers and just, a bunch of things that probably are really good ideas and all require that a local last mile presence, but maybe doing them all at once was a little bit much. I hope as they do this, that will cause the parts of their business, the parking and the restaurants that they are really focusing on, to then improve.
I think this will hopefully generate a higher level of focus and hopefully get them to a place where they can execute more consistently too.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing this week is about one of our favorite chains. I'm sure lots of you have heard of them, Sweetgreen. They released their results as well. All these public companies now.
I know, they've all grown up.
It's
babies,
amazing.
Yeah.
35% higher sales, earnings up 67%. And by the way, that's not just price inflation. Transactions are up 25%, and so 10% of that is price. Now, Sweetgreen have 164 locations. In our book, Delivering the Digital Restaurant, we talk about their outposting strategy, and I'm pleased to say that it seems like that is continuing to find some success. They have 98 more locations. There's 579 locations in total now that are outposts. And actually this week we talked about Easy Cater starting to see the growth of catering coming back, with people going back to the office. So I think Sweetgreen are playing into that as well. And also their AUV up to 2.8 million in comparison to last year. So that's a 700 grand rise. So, good signs for Sweetgreen. What are they doing well? What can people learn from them?
Well, I think first I would say just structurally they're benefiting from the post-COVID recovery. Sweetgreen tends to be a more urban concentrated brand. And as we know, during the pandemic, those brands that were more suburban in nature, and particularly those that had drive-through, did much better. So Sweetgreen is more urban and does not have a drive-through. So you can see how that would have really hurt during the pandemic. So I think some of this is just organic, natural recovery as we go through the post-pandemic era. I'll put that in air quotes. And then I think a lot of it is just, this is a fantastic brand. I'm going to refer to Greg Creed's book here on Red, right? Milk. Super relevant, creating something that is both healthy and delicious, super easy between their app and the outposts and all of that stuff, and very distinctive. Can you name anyone else who's doing what Sweetgreen does in the trifecta that they're doing it in? You really can't, right?
And it's good and it's tasty, and the food is king still, right? Yeah. That's what I love about it. I think they're really onto something. And their building, as a real estate person, you must love the building selection, right? And how they find these great spots to be able to put a Sweetgreen brand into. Yeah. Well, look, as ever, we could talk about this stuff all day long, but you guys have got to get on with your day. Thank you, as ever, for listening to us. Hopefully you found this interesting. There's going to be a bunch of things coming out about food on demand and the insights that have come through the last few days. But we're welcome to get your questions, your comments, your thoughts about what we should cover on our next edition. But until next time. The Monday Minute is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on all our social media Learn.Delivery channels. Thanks for listening.